I've been begging my mother to walk the dog by myself for 2 years. But today, Jeanette was with me, so I had an ally. Everyone has a Jeanette, right? Skinny, knock-kneed, laughs at everything, very eager, would do anything to be my friend, which really worked for me. She also lived on 54th between 1st and 2nd, and we lived on 57th between 2nd and 3rd, which meant she was a very easy play date, which was awesome today because she was going to help me get out the door with the dog. And my mother was distracted, and she was playing with a telephone cord that used to be circly and plastic, but you probably don't remember that. And she was probably yelling at her mother because they fought all the time, and she must have nodded yes because out we went. And we went out on the street, and it was very thrilling. We had felt gloriously independent. And the dog pulled us to the flower box to pee, and everyone was looking at us like, look at those two independent girls. Or at least it felt that way. And then a man walked up. Hi. Hi. Hi, Jeanette said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Cute, he said, looking at Alfie peeing. And then Alfie was done, and he moved along, so we moved with Alfie, and the man followed us. Hey, do you girls happen to know a place where I could change my clothes? Because I have to go to a meeting, and I really don't want to wear this. Do you know any place? And Jeanette looked down at her nibbled fingers, and just because I needed to prove that I was more articulate than Jeanette, and also because I actually did know a place, I answered, yeah, sure. There's the Sutton Place pool. That's where I swim. And I know they have a locker room there, so they'll definitely let you change. Oh, great, he said. And then Alfie pulled us down the street further. And then he followed us. Hey, listen, that's a great idea, but I don't really have time to go all the way down there. So I'm wondering, if I just went in that doorway there, maybe you could go with me and I could change, and then you could make sure nobody else sees, and you could kind of be on the lookout. And he pointed to a doorway with a curved top, one that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And I said, okay, sure. I mean, it was two things I loved, helping a guy as tall as my father and being responsible for something. We started to walk, and Jeanette followed us. Oh, she can stay with the dog outside. I mean, even he knew how annoying Jeanette was. Yeah, Jeanette, it's okay. Why don't you just stay out here? I'll be right out. Okay, she said. Jeanette was used to rejection. We walked in the doorway, and he quickly shut the door behind me. And instinctively, I leaned back. Almost instantly, I knew that this was a really bad idea. And I started to worry if maybe there'd be a gun or a knife. And then he pulled down his zipper to his fly, and I thought, oh shit, I have never seen a penis before, and it really looks like it's headed in that direction. Have you ever seen a penis before, he asked. Sure, I said. I had a pathological need for people to think that I knew everything at that time. Yeah? He took my small hand in his hand. If you rub it, it will grow, he said. The year before, we had gone to Central Park Zoo, and I had seen an elephant for the first time. And that's what I remember thinking, how much his flaccid, wrinkly penis looked like an elephant. Anyway, it wasn't really working, and he got frustrated. Or maybe he heard someone coming, but he quickly pulled himself away, zipped himself up, and we walked out the door. Jeanette popped up from the stoop, and he walked away, darted off. I don't know if he said goodbye. It's all kind of a little bit fuzzy. Everything okay, Jeanette asked? Yes. Anything happened? No, nothing. But nothing. Okay. Nothing happened, and I'm definitely not telling my mother. Well, as soon as we got upstairs and my mother opened the door, I burst into tears. Nothing happened. I repeated that phrase many, many times over the next several decades, not because I wanted to minimize it or forget it, mostly because I didn't really think that much had. And anyway, it was obviously my fault. I mean, who goes in a doorway with a stranger? Everyone knows if you go in a hallway with a strange man, you're supposed to give him a hand job. My father came home. He was so angry, I don't even really remember him speaking. And then the police came over and we gave a report, and we all went to bed. A week later, we got a call at night from the precinct that they'd found the guy and they needed me to come down and identify him in a lineup. My sister and I were already both in pajamas, so my mother threw on some lipstick on her mouth and coats on us, and off we went to the precinct. And when we got there, we stood behind glass, and there were about 8 to 10 men with various degrees of stubble and meanness staring at us. I looked right, and then left, and then right, and then about third from the right, he looked familiar, but I need to hear his voice. I need to hear his voice, I said to my mother. What? You need to speak up. My mother was not happy. She really liked Vogue magazine and being in the 15th floor apartment, which wasn't exactly the penthouse, but at least it was above all of this. This was not for her. Could you please ask them to speak? And then from behind the glass, in that crackly kind of New York subway speaker sound, gentlemen, could you please say your name and I need to find a place? I guess they didn't want him to say the whole sentence. That would be like a little too obvious or something. Well, the minute I heard, I need to find I knew it was him, and I jumped. It's him! It's him! I cried, and I buried my head in my father's coat. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. We're going to go home now. It's okay. And we did. We went home. And I was haunted. Was it right? Was it really him? Was it really him? Was it really him? Was it him? Until I fell asleep. Turned out it really was him. He was very busy in the East 50s. And about 6 months later, we got a call from a detective that they'd caught the guy and that they were starting a rehabilitation program. It was a pilot program, and he would be going to jail, but first they wanted to gather everyone together in a room, all of his victims, so that he could appreciate the consequences of his actions, and would we be willing to be part of this pilot program? And my mother hesitated. Well, I mean, Mayor John Lindsay is behind it, and her ears perked up because he was very handsome. And of course, Liza Minnelli would be giving money because, as you know, she lives one awning away. Oh, and she's asked Halston to be involved. So there will be a benefit if it goes through, and all of you will be honored guests. What exactly do we have to do? My mother asked. Several weeks later, we were brought into a room with a couple dozen girls and their families, mostly everybody looking down, a parent with a shoulder behind each one of us. And then a facilitator came out. Or she seemed like a teacher to me. What did I know? She talked and said, she thanked us all for coming and thanked us for our courage and wanted us to understand why we were there, and said that they would be bringing out the perpetrator. And then she asked if anybody knew that, and of course I raised my hand. And I didn't get to answer because an older girl answered, and she said, yeah, that's the guy who hurt us. And then there were some sniffles, some parents, mostly mothers, some girls. And then they brought him in his orange jumpsuit, with his arms tied behind his back, in handcuffs, obviously, looking down, everybody looking down on the floor for answers, except my mother. She was looking at the door for Liza, who everybody said how the experience had hurt them. Everybody had the chance to say their piece, which the facilitator had assured us would be healing and good for everyone and good for him. More sniffles. And it really was the saddest thing I've ever experienced. And frankly, I watched my father die of cancer, but this topped it. All these children robbed of their sense of peace and safety. All of us destined to a life of trauma therapy and eating disorders and those flashbacks that you can never excise. We went home. I'm not sure if I felt better. There was something to the sisterhood of it all, the very dark sisterhood, and thinking, well, how could it be my fault if it's everybody's fault then? I never found out if the pilot program worked, and my family never talked about it again. Happy Halloween. Thank you.
Give it up for Dani Klein Modisett, ladies and gentlemen.